Hey, welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about my coding bootcamp experience. When I began to learn to code, I had a lot of questions about my options. The most obvious one for me, I think, was whether I should go to a coding bootcamp or self-study. The biggest problem with that was it was actually really hard to get an inside look of what it looks like to attend a coding bootcamp on a day-to-day basis. A lot of bootcamps have their syllabus that they can send to you, and with some of them you can even get on the phone with an admissions counselor. But even if you get two of those things combined, it's hard to get a real idea of what it looks like to go to a coding bootcamp day to day. To me, it seems obvious that bootcamps would advertise this more openly and try to be campaigning to be more transparent about it as a part of their marketing plan, especially since there's so few bootcamps that are actually this open and transparent about what it looks like to go to a bootcamp day to day. There seems like a kind of a hole in the marketing for these bootcamps for a company that would be willing to give a better inside look of what it's like to go. But suffice it to say, finding information that was specific about what a given bootcamp even involved was hard and not very cohesive. When I did find it, I was always kind of scattered. But luckily for you, dear watcher, as of this week, I've spent 1 month attending the General Assembly Software Engineering Immersing program. And in this video today, I'm going to tell you what that experience has been like, challenges that I've had, and things that I wish I had done differently before the bootcamp and during the bootcamp process as well. I'm also going to try to give you a general idea of what it looks like to spend time doing this, because like I just mentioned, that's kind of the hardest thing to figure out in the first place. What's it going to look like day to day to be attending one of these boot camps? This was a big missing component for me that I only found out after I got into coding bootcamp. So this is the kind of video I wish I had seen before I signed up. For those of you that don't know, my name is Colby. I'm becoming a developer this year. And for those of you that are interested in doing the same, I would suggest you come along with me for the ride. It's been fun so far, and it's going to get even better. Let's get right into it. Week 1 was an introductory week that I covered in a previous video. You can watch that if you would like on my channel. It's worth checking out if you want a comprehensive breakdown of week 1 at General Assembly. But in a nutshell, day 1, we got to know each other a little bit and looked into command line interfacing. This was really interesting. This was something I hadn't covered, so that was a good thing to learn right off the bat. We spent the rest of the week covering a lot of the basics and not so basics of HTML and CSS. Keep in mind there was about 25 hours worth of pre-work that came before the bootcamp started, so a lot of this had already been covered before, just on a remote self-taught basis. So it was nice having an instructor kind of reintroduce us to those topics and being able to have our questions answered at that time. Week number 2 involved learning introductory JavaScript concepts like variables, control flow, arrays, etc. We also learned about functions and objects that week, so it was pretty comprehensive for learning that much within a week time frame. Certainly not unmanageable, but it was a lot. Similar to week number 1, a lot of this was covered in the pre-work, but it was great to review it, and I legitimately learned some new things along that time frame. So it was really valuable to cover that and be able to interact with other students and ask questions to the instructors and the TA. I have to say, though, that by the time this came around, I was very glad that I had spent the amount of time that I did self-studying beforehand. And I think if I leave you with one piece of advice from this video, it's that you really can't study too much before going to a coding bootcamp. The developer community tends to break up coding bootcamp graduates from self-taught developers, and it's for a good reason. I mean, it's really hard to teach yourself how to code. Either way, it's hard to learn how to code, but teaching it by yourself without the constant support of an instructor is excruciatingly hard. So there's some pride to be had with that, and I get why people would separate the self-taught engineers from the bootcamp graduates. That said, I think separating the two makes aspiring developers a little bit confused about what they should do. I think that a lot of people, when they decide they want to go to a coding bootcamp and sign up or just commit to going in the first place, it's easy to put aside self-studying for a while because you kind of rest on the laurels of this bootcamp that you've signed up for and think that there's not a ton that I have to learn now that I'm not just going to relearn when I go to coding bootcamp. And that might be kind of true, but I would propose a little bit of a different mindset. This is partially the way that I felt myself before going to a coding bootcamp. And if you're in this mindset, if I had one thing to say, it would be this: you're thinking too short term. I want to broaden your horizons a little bit, because it's really easy to just think, okay, I'm going to go to coding bootcamp, I'm going to learn everything I need to know, and I'm going to get a job right when I get out. And that might have been the case a couple of years ago, but it's much less the case now. If you're a developer in this mindset, you've pigeonholed yourself between self-taught and bootcamp, and I want you to stop thinking of it that way. A high-quality career and a robust skill set is not built by being exclusionary about when you start studying. Rather, it's a collection of the amount of time you've spent studying and the quality of your studying over that time. So what you have to do is start studying in a deliberate fashion with high quality materials as quickly as possible and start getting deep work in now before you go to a coding bootcamp. I don't care if you're planning on going in a year and a half. You should be teaching yourself to code right now if you have even 30 minutes or an hour a day free. It's really important to start ASAP because you're only going to be more prepared by the time you get to coding bootcamp, and it's going to increase the quality of the projects you make in bootcamp. You're going to be much more qualified compared to your peers by the time you exit bootcamp. All of these are going to put you way ahead of your competition regarding your peers. In a nutshell, getting deep work done as soon as possible is the most important thing when it comes to learning to code. For this, actually, I would specifically recommend reading Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. It's a really good look into how you should be thinking about getting better at this particular skill. And he actually is a former developer, so he talks a lot about programming. It's an awesome title, and it's a great audiobook too, so it's worth a good listen. Okay, rant over. Let's get back to week 3. Week 3 was a combination of learning Flexbox for CSS and continuing to learn JavaScript. The first day and a half was spent learning about Flexbox, and the rest of the week was spent learning array iterator methods, from the common ones like push and pop to some less commonly used ones like sum. Once again, I had covered a lot of this already just by doing free code camp, Zero to Mastery, and some front-end masters. But most of the topics that I've been talking about came with a homework assignment that took a couple 2 to 4 hours to complete. So there was a ton of practice to be had, and that was very valuable to get some real coding experience in and actually play around with these iterator methods, functions, objects, etc. I also certainly, I had learned a lot of this already, but I certainly had not mastered it. So getting to relearn some of these things, since it had been several months since I had initially learned them, was really valuable. In any case, the last week of month 1 at Coding Bootcamp was a combination of learning about DOM elements and event listeners, along with combining everything else that we had already learned, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc., into one a little bit slightly more cohesive project, little mini project. And the last project that we did, or the primary project that we did over the course of a day, was just a simple tic-tac-toe project. It's a really easy game to play. The logic isn't extremely complicated, but putting this project together really helped to solidify all the things that we had learned up until this point. It also reminded me that I think that I spent a little bit too much time in my pre-work, or rather in my self-studying time, just following tutorials. There's a common trope within the self-taught developer world about getting stuck in tutorial hell, which, for those of you who don't know, is basically when you follow tutorials and code alongs until the point where you have a ton of really nice looking finished products. And then as soon as you sit down at your IDE, you have no idea where to even start with any given project, because you've just been copying what other people are doing. And you've been following these tutorials that are unrealistically polished, where no one makes a mistake for a whole hour and a half tutorial. And it's ridiculously easy compared to actual coding, and frankly a little bit dishonest in the formatting. Making a game as simple as tic-tac-toe was a great reminder that coding is hard, and there's a lot of debugging to do when you're not just looking up every single resource that you need to get a project done as quickly as possible. People have coded tic-tac-toe hundreds of thousands of times, if not millions of times, and you can find a ton of finished tic-tac-toe projects just by going to CodePen or another one of these coding websites. But really doing it yourself makes you troubleshoot manually and is extremely helpful for that reason. One of the biggest things that I've taken away from this is that I don't think I'd be able to do the bootcamp on their full-time schedule. Even if I could get through it, I'm pretty sure I could, I wouldn't choose to. The pace on the part-time program is fast enough to be able to absorb plenty of material and not fall behind. If you don't agree with me, that's okay, but I would prompt you to look into the material that I just covered, that we went over. Look it up on Free Code Camp and just give it a go. See if you can complete the Free Code Camp HTML, CSS, and JavaScript courses that they have on there within the matter of, a month. Yeah, I'm sure you'd be able to if you really put your mind to it. But the question is, how much are you actually learning? How much are you absorbing? How much are you keeping? And by the time you are at the end of that month, how much of that can you actually replicate versus having more time to absorb and reinforce that information over twice the amount of time? I just don't think it's an optimal pace for absorbing as much of the curriculum as you can. So for that reason, I still stand by my previous conviction that you are best off going with the part-time program in almost every situation. In any case, that is 1 month of General Assembly. Overall, my experience has been great. I've had a good time with the teachers and the TAs. They've been pretty supportive, and my cohort is awesome. So we all get along really well, and it's been rad. So anyways, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. Make sure to subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and it's been cool seeing you guys join along for the ride. So thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.